What is going on, fellow pop music nerds? My name is Johnny K, and this is the first episode of Pop Untold, a series in which I take you through the stories of your favorite pop albums. For today's episode, we are going to explore the era that helped to establish Dua Lipa as a pop legend in the making. Future Nostalgia, the unstoppable album, made undeniably enjoyable by its clear concept and its flawless execution. You know this album, you like this album, but you'll love it after taking in its full story. After many listens and extensive research, I have some things to share that will not only shed some light on Dua Lipa, but will also help you to experience and perceive this era as a whole. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get started. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the iconic story of Future Nostalgia. We begin this story in January of 2018, about 6 months after the release of her debut record. At this point in time, Dua Lipa is touring around the world. She's completed around 30 shows, and as she is wrapping up the first leg of her tour, she's beginning to embark on her newest project. Now, one thing you may not have known is that the early stages of Future Nostalgia weren't actually dedicated to Future Nostalgia. The album was originally set to be titled Glass House, which coincidentally is referenced on Future Nostalgia's title track. During the early stages of the creation process, Dua Lipa felt overtaken by the pressure to deliver on her sophomore record. In a way, she felt like all eyes were on her, ready to scrutinize and judge her every move. So initially, it made sense to name the album Glass House, as the album was most likely going to venture through topics such as fame, pressure, and a fear of failure. Now, as we can see here, the Glass House concept is, pun intended, a full 180 from the Future Nostalgia concept. Glass House is all about embodying pressure, while Future Nostalgia is all about leaving your worries on the dance floor. So one thing you may be wondering is, how did Future Nostalgia even become a thing? How did Dua Lipa steer her way towards the concept that would create her greatest album? Well, you're about to find out. At the onset of the creation process, Dua Lipa began working with Max Martin, who, if you didn't know, is also the co-creator of The Weeknd's Blinding Lights. You have to find this fact ironic, since The Weeknd and Dua Lipa are heavily responsible for bringing disco and 80s pop back to the charts in our current age. Of course, artists such as Lady Gaga, Adam Lambert, Harry Styles, and Doja Cat have played their roles too in bringing vintage influence to the mainstream, but Dua Lipa and The Weeknd have arguably ushered in the most recent era of reminiscent pop. Dua Lipa also spent the early days working with Mark Ronson, the artist who released Uptown Funk with Bruno Mars. Uptown Funk was Mark Ronson's most successful hit, winning the 2016 Grammy for Record of the Year, staying at number 1 on the Hot 100 for 14 consecutive weeks, and granting Mark Ronson his first number 1 hit on the chart. Having someone in your corner with this level of accolade is bound to elevate your potential for success. So it may come off as a disappointment when I tell you that Mark Ronson has 0 credits on this album. Now, the fact is still a fact. Mark Ronson did indeed work with Dua Lipa around this time, but his name is nowhere to be seen on the list of songwriters and producers. So what gives? Did Mark Ronson impact Future Nostalgia in any way? Is Mark Ronson one of the many people we should be thanking for the birth of this pop classic? Well, it may shock you, but the answer to this question is yes. While it is true that none of the final cuts on Future Nostalgia feature Mark's contributions, there is still one standalone track that we do get to hear, and this track may have influenced this story more than you think. Fast forward to September 6 of 2018. It's been a few months since Dua Lipa's collab with Calvin Harris, One Kiss, was released. And now, Dua Lipa partners with Silk City, the musical duo of Diplo and Mark Ronson, to release the highly successful track Electricity. Electricity and One Kiss almost served as test runs to see how the general public would respond to Dua Lipa going back in time. Both tracks have been praised for their 90s house influence, and as Dua Lipa was starting to find comfort with this new sound, Future Nostalgia slowly became the album's concept. Skipping a month later to October of 2018, and it's apparently around this time that the Future Nostalgia light bulb went off. As Dua Lipa was on her way to a radio show in Las Vegas, the title of the album came to her, and from that moment on, she began to work in reverse order, drafting her songs, ideas, and executions around the nostalgic concept. Her team wasn't immediately on board with the album's new direction, but as Electricity and One Kiss gained more success, Future Nostalgia gained more appeal. One Kiss went on to become MTV's most played music video of 2018, as well as becoming the third longest UK singles chart topper of the century, staying at number 1 for 8 consecutive weeks. One Kiss also granted Dua Lipa the award for Best British Single at the 2019 Brit Awards. Electricity helped Dua Lipa snag the award for Best Dance Recording at the 2019 Grammys, and on top of that, she also received the Grammy for Best New Artist. Reaching these accolades lit a fire within Dua Lipa as she underwent her sophomore project. They instilled in her a deeper sense of confidence, and they helped to solidify the notion that future nostalgia was the right way to go. Over the course of the next year, Dua Lipa would dedicate herself to the album's new direction. She did her best to remove herself from social pressures, deleting her Twitter and fully diving into her studio sessions. She began working with a pretty impressive line of producers, and I want to go through some of them with you just to help you grasp the level of talent that helped create this record. First, there's Jeff Basker, the Jeff who helped produce Uptown Funk, and the Jeff who did the damn thing on the album's title track. Next, there's Jason Effigen, one of the producers of Madonna's Ghost Town, arguably the best song of her 2015 album, Rebel Heart. Then we have Cos, who has worked with Madonna and Nicki Minaj, and he's also the producer of the tracks Physical and Levitating. There's Ian Kirkpatrick, who helped to produce Selena Gomez's Look at Her Now, as well as Dua Lipa's most successful tracks, New Rules and Don't Start Now. There's S.G. Lewis, who helped write and produce one of my favorite tracks, Hallucinate. There's Andrew Watt, who has worked with more top-tier artists than I can name. There's Nile Rodgers, a disco and funk legend who I was lucky enough to see live as he opened for Cher's Here We Go Again tour in 2019. And finally, we have my favorite producer of this entire lineup, Stuart Price, who contributed greatly to Madonna's disco influence, Confessions on a Dance Floor album from 2005. When it came to the actual recording sessions, Dua Lipa knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted to dive into the kind of music she wasn't hearing a lot of on the radio. She wanted to get back in touch with her childhood influences. She wanted to create an album that sounded timeless, and she was motivated by some of her favorite albums, two of them being Loose by Nelly Furtado and Future Sex Love Sounds by Justin Timberlake. There was also a bit of growth that she showcased while recording. She realized that in order to be successful with her sophomore record, she had to be honest and authentic, but she also couldn't take herself too seriously. After having the experience of being on tour, she also realized that she wanted to bring more of a live element to the album so that her live performances can sound more like the studio versions. On top of that, she incorporated similar bass lines and string compositions over the course of multiple songs to make the album feel cohesive, and she often used the same mic to record as to keep a consistent audio quality on the album. Finally, she committed herself to being more vocal and opinionated in the studio, making sure that each song matched her vision and ensuring that she kept creative control. So now we arrive at the end of 2019. It's been nearly 2 years of trial and error, and Dua Lipa now has somewhere around 60 songs to sort through. As we all know, only 11 out of those 60 tracks would make the final cut, and it is those 11 songs that became what we now know as Future Nostalgia. Before we dive into the songs, I wanted to quickly sum up the events that happened leading up to the album's release. On October 31st, 2019, the Future Nostalgia era officially began with the release of Don't Start Now. Since its release, Dua Lipa heavily promoted the song, giving various live performances, with the most notable one being her performance at the 2019 MTV EMAs. Dua Lipa was praised for her confident stage presence, vocal delivery, and choreography, and after this performance, she was seen as someone who could take criticism and grow from it. While Dua Lipa was nervous of how the world would react to Don't Start Now, it went on to become her most successful track, peaking at number 2 on the Hot 100. On December 13, 2019, the title track was released as a promotional single to keep album interest going into the new year. It was a smart choice to release this track ahead of the album, as the song took some time to grow on us, and we wouldn't have fully appreciated it if we had heard it for the first time with everything else. On January 30th, 2020, Dua Lipa released Physical and all hell broke loose in a good way. Don't Start Now did what a lead single is supposed to do, which is generate interest and excitement towards the upcoming album, but Physical was legendary because paired with Don't Start Now, we as consumers were given a true sneak peek of the kind of song quality we'd get on the record. And for those who missed the release of the title track, we now got the confirmation that this album would utilize influences from the past to create an impactful body of work. Fast forward to March of 2020, and the world is introduced to a global pandemic. Anything that isn't deemed essential to human life is closed. Many albums have been pushed back, and all current and upcoming tours have been canceled. Having never faced a situation like this before, Dua Lipa and her team are forced to decide if it's smart or empathetic to release an album during such an uncertain time, and Dua Lipa prepares to postpone the album. Eventually, Dua Lipa decided to release Future Nostalgia on April 3rd. She felt that the album would provide a mental escape for many people, and she felt that she would be doing a disservice to her fans by pushing it back. As with most popular projects these days, Future Nostalgia was leaked 2 weeks ahead of schedule, and in response, the release date was moved to a week earlier on March 27th. After almost half a year of promoting and building anticipation, Future Nostalgia is finally here. The album starts off with the title track, a synth-pop and electro-funk groove that immediately takes us to the 1980s. Dua Lipa presents herself as bold yet playful and fun as she sings about making something timeless and changing the game. Jeff Bhasker is the one who initially brought up the idea of making a song titled Future Nostalgia. After enlisting the help of Clarence Coffey Jr., the three of them brought the song to life. And after writing the female alpha line, Dua Lipa decided to use Future Nostalgia as the album opener as a way to start her sophomore record on a fearless note. Don't Start Now is a disco-heavy breakup anthem. The initial purpose of producing this song was to recreate the success of New Rules. But after many writing sessions and countless sampling, Don't Start Now eventually became what it is today. A conceptual bridge that connects the theme of her previous works with the sound of her new record. Don't Start Now always resonated more as a sequel to New Rules rather than a remake. As the lead single, it served as a way to bring an end to a chapter in Dua Lipa's life, and as the second song on the album, it creates the opportunity early on for Dua Lipa to take us through a story of finding new love. Cool contains more Prince and R&B influences, and whenever I listen to it, it reminds me of I Wanna Be Your Man by Zapp and Roger. Cool is the first song we hear that details Dua Lipa finding new love. Everything about this song radiates the perfect blend of inner peace and excitement, and her various mentions of summer set the stage for a bright love story. Physical is the ultimate culmination of momentum, wit, and sex appeal, and it's obviously an album highlight. As we listen to the album and digest its concept, it makes sense to see this homage to Olivia Newton-John as a calculated decision to pull at a nostalgic string. You would think Dua Lipa had the idea for Physical since day one, but turns out this song just kind of happened. Dua Lipa describes Physical as a spur-of-the-moment type of song, and while the Olivia reference wasn't planned, it is iconic. It's one of the things that will help Dua Lipa go down in history as a pop mastermind, and this is the song I imagine her listening to whenever I look at the album cover. Levitating was unexpected. On my first listen, I didn't think I'd hear anything better than Physical, but I actually like this track more. Levitating was the first song Dua Lipa finished after dedicating herself to the Future Nostalgia concept in 2018. With the constant mentioning of rockets, stars, and galaxies, we see the same songwriting quality that brought the 80s feel to Physical. Levitating sounds fresh and refined through its 90s R&B influence, and it does a great job staying on track with the album's theme of dancing, leaving your worries behind, and falling in love. Pretty Please is the simplest song we hear so far. Giving a spotlight to Dua Lipa's sultry voice and a smooth bass line, Pretty Please embodies sexual frustration in a way that showcases desire through an uncharted lens. Pretty Please gives us a momentary break from the power pop tracks we've heard so far, and it sets us up nicely for the following track. Hallucinate resurfaces the up-tempo anthemic energy we get from the record's first songs. Dua Lipa sings of the psychedelic state she's brought to whenever her lover calls her name. As the song progresses, she embraces the thrill of vulnerability and becomes obsessed with living in a trance. Hallucinate is the first song that truly reminds me of confessions on a dance floor, specifically the tracks Jump and Future Lovers. There have also been comparisons made to Lady Gaga's Poker Face, but inspirations aside, Hallucinate stands on its own as the album's resurgence in momentum. Love Again also takes me back to Madonna's Confessions with the way it starts and ends on an orchestral note. Sampling Your Woman by Whitetown, Love Again is the first song that doesn't feel fully encapsulated by the honeymoon phase. Besides Don't Start Now, this is the first song that references heartbreak and sadness, but it's mainly reflective and mostly optimistic. One of the highlights in this song is the bridge. The attention to detail is amazing. Dua Lipa sounds great, and there was no rush to get to the final chorus. Love Again is a fully realized experience, and I hope more artists in the future utilize songs like this as a blueprint. Break My Heart infuses love with fear. While uncontrollably falling in love, Dua Lipa wonders if the person she gives her heart to will one day crush it. This is a normal fear, but to sort through it at such an early stage of a relationship is something I've rarely heard in a song. Some critics have called Break My Heart unoriginal, and I have to strongly disagree. There have been similarities noticed between Break My Heart and a 1987 hit titled Need You Tonight. You can definitely hear the influence, but whenever I listen to Break My Heart, I always saw it as more of a nod to Queen's 1980 hit Another One Bites the Dust. No matter how you feel about the song's authenticity, Break My Heart is due its credit. It's a clever and climactic hit, and it thematically connects with Love Again as well as the track that comes next. Good in Bed contains elements of pop, funk, and hip-hop. Dua Lipa describes this track as the embodiment of a relationship that solely relies on sex to hold two people together. While Good in Bed is hit or miss, it is one of the more unique tracks on Future Nostalgia. It's the only song that utilizes shock factor, and it's a representation of making dance music out of a potentially dark subject. Boys Will Be Boys is an orchestral pop ballad that tackles subjects like sexual harassment, double standards, and misogyny. This song is either praised or criticized for its serious subject and down-tempo delivery. While some enjoyed the change of pace, others found it disruptive to have a song on the record that drifts so far away from the concept, and many questioned Dua Lipa's decision to place it at the end of the album. Personally, I've always perceived Boys Will Be Boys' placement as Dua Lipa's way of saying, now that I've captured your attention, this is something I'd really like to talk about. But that is just my opinion. No matter how you feel about the song's placement or lack of cohesion, the fact is that it stands strong as a standalone track. It's a powerful anthem that shows she can produce more than dance floor hits, and it gives her character the most depth out of any other song on the album. With that being said, we have reached the end of Future Nostalgia. Our journey through the track list is now complete, but the story of Future Nostalgia isn't quite yet finished. For the last part of this story, we are going to discuss the album's performance, reception, and impact. We're going to discuss the importance of Future Nostalgia, the impact it had on Dua Lipa's career, and the impact it could have on the lives of people like you and me. So on that note, I present to you the final chapter of this story, the legacy of Future Nostalgia. Future Nostalgia would go on to debut at number 4 on the Billboard 200, raking in over 66,000 units. To put this into perspective, the self-titled album hit its highest position at number 27, so this new era was definitely a commercial upgrade. Future Nostalgia would be met with critical acclaim, achieving an impressive Metacritic score of 88 out of 100. Reviewers praised Dua Lipa for her lack of features and fillers. The album was described as an experience. Dua Lipa was described as a visionary for pop rather than a vessel for pop. And one critic even claimed this album may establish Dua Lipa as one of the greatest pop stars of all time. Zachary Campbell said he had no critiques for the album, and AJ commented on the record's mature content, expressing that Dua Lipa had shown notable growth. Lastly, Future Nostalgia was included in over 15 lists detailing the best albums of 2020 so far, and because of this album, Dua Lipa is guaranteed to be a huge competitor at the 2021 Grammys. Since the album's release, Dua Lipa has promoted where she can. She released Hallucinate in July as the latest single alongside an animated video, and she conducted virtual performances of Don't Start Now and Break My Heart. On top of that, she also performed a few tracks as part of a charity live stream to raise funds in relation to the pandemic, and she has the Future Nostalgia Tour set to begin in January of 2021. So why does Future Nostalgia matter? What kind of impact did it have? And how can Dua Lipa's story influence the lives of people like you and me? Future Nostalgia was a game changer, not just for Dua Lipa, but also for her fans and for the music industry. Other artists have released pop albums towards the end of 2019 and the start of 2020, but none of them re-established pop as the dominant genre until Future Nostalgia came around. Dua Lipa raised the bar for what we expect out of our pop stars with tracks like Don't Start Now and Physical, two tracks that will ever exist as career highlights. I'm positive that Dua Lipa will give us many hits in the future, but fans will forever remember these two songs in the way Madonna fans remember Ray of Light and the way Lady Gaga fans remember Bad Romance. Dua Lipa also drafted a new blueprint for what makes a successful sophomore record. While artists are usually pressured to emulate the sound that brought them initial success, Dua Lipa has shown that you can find success with your second album by going back to your roots and connecting with a sound that you absolutely love. A sound that makes you forget about the pressure you feel, and a sound that makes music creation more of an opportunity and less of an obligation. Finally, Dua Lipa showed us that the possibilities for success are endless. Many thought Dua Lipa would fade into the background as her debut era came to a close. They didn't think she'd have it in her to top her first album, but through hard work, strategy, growth, and passion, Dua Lipa created one of the best albums of our current age and solidified herself as a powerhouse of pop. For people like you and me, this iconic story is a reminder that we can achieve so much more than what we initially believed. So many of us have been steered away from our dreams, and as we settle into adult life, we detach ourselves from what really makes us happy to the point that it bothers us to see others live their best lives. As Dua Lipa thrives in the aftermath of her own grit and determination, I hope we can all take the iconic story of Future Nostalgia and use it to elevate our lives to the fullest. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of Pop Untold. Let me know what you thought of this episode and let me know what you think of Future Nostalgia. Some of my favorite tracks off the album are Hallucinate, Levitating, and Love Again. I'll be sure to include my full ranking of this album in the comments, so be sure to let me know what your favorites are. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to help the channel grow by giving this video a thumbs up, sharing the video, and subscribing for more iconic stories. Simple actions like these help the channel out a lot, so I definitely appreciate your support. Stay tuned for next week's episode, in which we'll premiere the first installment of the Caligora Saga, a collection of stories detailing Katy Perry's discography. As always, if there are any other albums you'd like me to explore, just give me that heads up. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. My name is Johnny K, and this is Pop Untold.